Every week on How to Business, we answer one question designed to help small business owners get unstuck and restore business momentum. This week's question is, do you actually know what's driving sales, or are you just guessing? So when we ask that question, do you know what's driving your sales? Do you know why they're up? Do you know why they're down? Most owners know the big number. They know at the end of the month how much money they made or didn't make, but that's a lagging indicator. And so what we're talking about today is how do you predict what your future revenue is going to be? By the time you see your revenue numbers and it's down, whatever caused it has already happened. So the temptation at that stage is to react emotionally. Your sales team isn't performing, your marketing isn't working. You got to have more leads. You got to have better leads. People just aren't spending money. All of that is just theory. It's not an accurate diagnosis. And there are two ways to manage a business. And you and I have talked about this. You can manage it by feelings or by facts. I love the analogy of the check engine light. And when you're thinking about that in context of a business, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, we've all been there. We're driving down the road and the big red light comes on. And check engine is such a big concept. It can cover hundreds and hundreds of things. And I think a lot of times in business, revenue is often kind of like our check engine light. Something's wrong with revenue. We came in under our numbers. The check engine light is on. But in reality, it doesn't tell us anything. I mean, you don't take the car to the mechanic and he immediately replaces your engine because the check engine light comes on. Obviously, that's not the right call. So he's going to go in there with a code reader and he's going to plug it in and he's going to read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of codes to find out what's actually causing the check engine light to go off. And that's kind of like what metrics are in a business. The check engine light comes on, revenue is down. And rather than replacing the whole sales system or replacing the whole sales team or that one salesperson you've got your eye on, it's more important to stop and actually look at the codes and find out what's wrong. And in this case, our codes are our metrics. And we want to dig into those and find out exactly where in the process we have a problem so that we can actually fix it and not actually go make a bigger mess. Imagine if you took the engine out and all it needed was a good oil change. That was a pretty expensive mistake. And so we want to make sure we're actually finding the real problems, treating those real problems, and saving and protecting those things that are not broken in our business.
That's right. Sales are down isn't a diagnosis. It's a symptom. And how many times have you been in a meeting room and somebody comes in, throws the report down, sales are down. What's going on? It's like, well, hang on. Let's look at this a little bit more carefully. And that's what we're talking about here. So if revenue numbers at the end of the month aren't the right thing to look at, what should an owner actually look at? I think there are 3 questions that we can ask to kind of help business owners understand where to start. And the first one is, what activities are actually building up to actually create a sale? And work backwards from that. You know how many sales you need in a month to hit your target. So let's say your goal is 10 sales a month. What has to happen before a sale to get to that point? For a simple service business, think about it this way. You've got leads, certain number of leads become conversations. Those conversations turn into appointments, which turn into proposals, which turn into sales. So the important thing is, can you draw the path from prospect to customer? And once you know the path, you can measure it, obviously. So you want to keep that measurement really simple. Don't build a dashboard with 50 numbers. Start with a handful, thinking about how many leads came in this month, how many did we actually connect with, how many moved to the next step, so on and so forth. So if you got 100 leads but only had 25 conversations, you don't have a lead problem. You've got a problem between lead and conversion. Buying more leads isn't going to fix that, right? And you and I have been in that situation a few times. So this is something you've obviously managed at a very detailed level. So walk through how you think about that process.
So when I'm thinking about the sales process, as you said earlier, everyone's going to have a different set of metrics that they're going to look at, but it's important to sit down and know what those are. And it does matter keeping it simple. Some businesses, you and I have been through this where, there's 4 sheets of paper and there's all of these things that we're measuring. Let's keep it simple because that's going to help with our team morale. Everybody wants to know what success looks like, and it's hard to keep up with success if it looks like 50 different things every single month. So let's keep it simple. Let's know the steps that we want to follow in our sales process. Let's start all the way at the beginning with marketing. You start with the number of impressions that you're getting in a given platform, say Google, and then you're going to measure how many of those impressions turned into clicks. And then of those clicks, how many people who landed on your website actually filled out a form or went through your lead funnel or contacted you. And now once we actually have a person in the system, did we reach out to them in a fast period of time, or did a lot of time pass? We want to measure that. And then we want to see how many conversations we actually get going. And then from there, it continues on all the way into appointments and contracts and eventually closed sales. The point, though, is that if you're measuring every single step and all right, I need X number of impressions, you'll know when you're on track or off track. And that's what we're trying to measure every month. So that at the end of the month, if revenue is off, you're going to be able to go back and look and see exactly why that happened. It won't be, well, you know what, that one salesperson, I don't think they're committed. That is not how we do business. That may be true, but we need to know before we start throwing around accusations that someone's dragging the rest of the team down. And I love numbers because it's a great equalizer. It takes all the emotion out. We simply sit down and we look at what the numbers tell us. And so if we are looking great in 5 of our metrics, but 1 is off, we know that's where we need to begin our conversation and our search for what's wrong, instead of just wondering every month why our numbers are down. And that is so typical of most small businesses. It's not your fault. You're busy. But this is actually the point. Having these metrics helps busy people have a way to quickly look at what's happening in the business and know pretty fast where the problems are. If we keep it ethereal and we don't measure it, we are going to chase rabbits in our business, hoping to solve the problem, because it's going to get worse if we don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah. And like you said, you have to really keep it simple because of how busy and complicated running a business is. If you make it too complicated, it's going to be even more work to manage it. And we are talking to the business owners. You've got to make it something that you can just have a quick conversation about. Again, think about that check engine light. What are those 5 areas of activities that you're looking at, and then start to diagnose from there.
And it's very easy to get paralysis going when there are lots of things to measure. That's one of the things we love to help business owners with, is taking all of the different potential metrics that you have and really distilling those into the most important things. A lot of them could be categorized together under one big heading, and then you can start tracking those big headings as opposed to trying to track 50 things. And so we can sit down with a business owner and help them get that distilled down to the most important 4 or 5 things that they need to be tracking every month to find out if their sales process is healthy.
So the second question we like to ask when we're looking at numbers is, where did the number actually change? And again, once you know that basic sales path, it's a lot easier to diagnose where the leak is. And so you're not asking, why are sales down? You're asking, which number changed? And maybe a couple of numbers changed. Maybe all of them did, but at least you can be logical and thoughtful about the approach to diagnosing where and how to fix it. And so let's say we got Sally on our team and her sales are down. So gut reaction might be, well, Sally just isn't cutting it. We need somebody who can go in and kind of do all the things that everybody else is seemingly able to do. But what if Sally has plenty of leads and she's talking to plenty of people, and maybe she's actually got a higher close rate than everybody else, but her problem is that maybe she just isn't converting enough conversations into appointments? That's a very different problem, and something that's very coachable and a lot cheaper and easier to fix than replacing Sally. So again, you've been in this spot many times.
Well, I'll start this conversation by saying that in the absence of a process, people become the target. And that's what this process can save us from doing as owners. It's very easy to just say, I knew it. that salesperson that I've had my eye on is the problem. And I've seen a lot of owners do this. And those owners that tend to kind of rely on their gut a little bit more, they tend to lean this way. And I have saved so many great team members by reminding the owner that this process we've put in by measuring every part of our sales process is going to figure out where that problem is. And maybe Sally is the problem, but let's go investigate that first. One of the things that I really am passionate about is not tossing people overboard over one or two things that may be going on. And that's what can happen when in the absence of these metrics in this process. So an example of that is if you got this person on the team who maybe they're doing really good, they get their leads in, they're having conversations, but then their appointments fall off a cliff. They might be, as you said, the best closer we've got on the team. They've just got this one area here. Wouldn't it be awful if we fired the best closer on the team because we didn't realize that was where the problem was? We just knew that person's not getting it done. But because we didn't have anything to measure, we couldn't figure out where her problem was in order to save her. And more importantly, save the business from having to go through the process of interviewing somebody else, making sure they're a good culture fit, making sure they have all the skills that we need. We could have saved this person with this one little process of looking at each metric and finding out where they're down. So this becomes an HR issue at some point where we can drastically improve the longevity of our team members, the tenure that we have them on our team, if we simply measure their results instead of going, well, your sales were down for 3 straight months, so you're out of here. What if we could just pinpoint the thing and go fix it?
That's such a good example because what I heard was this goes beyond numbers. This goes beyond the financial success of a business, because think about what that would do to the morale and the culture of your organization. That's not going to work long term, regardless of whatever incentives you put in place or how much opportunity you give people to grow. We've all got our limits. And we've seen even the most amazing salespeople hit walls and flame out. And it's because they didn't have anybody believing in them, pushing them, coaching them, helping them to make those little minor adjustments, like you said, that can completely rewire how they operate and how then that changes the business.
So metrics tell your sales team and your team as a whole what success looks like. And when we put in metrics and we say, guys, here is the expectation for all 5 categories. Everybody knows what success looks like now. They're not wondering, am I going to get fired today when I walk in because I saw my team member get fired and I didn't really even understand why? That's what happens when we don't measure things. People just kind of get let go because we thought they weren't performing. This tells the team, this is what success looks like. And if you do this, you get to stay and you get to make lots of money with the rest of us. That's when you begin to build loyalty, trust with your team instead of ruling by fear. If every time sales are down, somebody gets let go, or the owner comes in and wears everybody out because they're frustrated and they're scared they're not going to make payroll, that kills the morale of the team. Instead, we know that these 5 things equal success. Here are the numbers I need to hit in every category. If I do that this month, I'm going to be fine. And that is such a better work environment for the average person than wondering what success looks like, wondering if I'm going to get to keep my job next month. We got to give people the security of knowing what success looks like. So as you said, these metrics go way beyond revenue, and they begin to actually shore up the fundamentals and the core principles of our business. Things like, what does success look like to be on this team?
Yeah. And I think that leads into the next question, which is, how are you using numbers? Using them to look back or to look ahead and be proactive and plan? And this is where I think this becomes really valuable, because it's a step in maturity of you as a business owner and of your business as a whole. Most small businesses are using numbers like a rearview mirror. You get to month end, your accountant closes the books, sales are down 15%. That's too late to do anything about it. And so if you know what activities drive sales, those numbers become a windshield instead of a rearview mirror. And halfway through the month, you might see, well, it looks like we're on target with leads. We're on target with conversations. Appointments are 30% behind. Now you can be laser focused, figuring out What are we missing in that appointment stage before the problem shows up in next month's revenue? And that's the difference between reactive management and proactive management. And that's something you said in our prep that I thought was important. The goal isn't really to get better at explaining a month's number, right?
So when you first start this process, it will be a diagnostic looking back because you probably have a little bit of a mess because you haven't been measuring things for a while. So you're going to have a couple of months and you're going to look at these metrics and go, okay, here's where our problem is. But then the whole team's going to get focused on fixing that one problem. So let's say we are not setting enough appointments. So everybody's going to be all hands on deck this next month trying to put together a plan to fix the appointment setting problem that we have. So theoretically, you ought to start seeing that number go way up by next month because we all know what the problem is. So if we keep all the other categories where they were and we work on appointments, we're going to see that come way up. And so then you get to a point where you ought to be right on the money at the end of the month, meaning here was our goal and we worked on these things. Boom. We were just plus or minus 1% of that because we are so dialed into these metrics that we're no longer looking back going, oh my gosh, we missed revenue by 25%. Where's the problem? No, you're not doing that anymore because you've been fixing all of those things month to month to month. And now it's just tiny course corrections. Usually you're going to be, if you're off, you're just off a little bit. And by the way, off, under, and above. It's always great to go way over. But as you said, as we mature as business owners, we should kind of know when that's going to happen. Everybody loves to high five when we blow through the month, by 10 or 20%. But it also does say that there is something else going on in the business, and we need to figure out why were we so up this month. You want to really dial in that goal. Maybe we set our goal too low. Do we sandbag that goal? So you start getting into all of these conversations that you were never having before. You don't just hold your breath and wait to the end of the month and go, how did we do? You're going to know at the first of the month how you're going to do at the end of that month if you're measuring these things correctly.
Yeah, and you know what else you've done as you've gone through that process and you're proactive? You have built a system. And when a system is working along each step, as you know it can, you're going to hit your number. Like imagine just the joy and peace as a business owner you have knowing my system is working. My system is working. If you've got a check engine light, ignition, fuel, transmission, acceleration, steering, go, like it works. But if one function of that system breaks down, the whole thing comes to a halt. But it makes it a lot easier to know where you can focus your attention to get it back on the road if it does come apart. That's why we preach systems all the time. And if you have it, how it changes your entire workflow and in your business life cycle.
And are you ever going to have a month where you don't hit your goal? Absolutely. But the point of this is to dial it in so well that we're not having 25, 30% swings in our stated revenue goal and our actual revenue that we brought in that month. You don't want those wild swings. You want a really small 0.5%, maybe 1% swing, and that's it. And imagine how much more peace of mind you're going to have as a business owner. And by the way, this doesn't just apply to sales. This applies to so many different areas of the business. That's a conversation for another day. But we can put systems where we measure all of the important steps for most of the areas of our business.
Absolutely. You don't have to make it complicated. Starts with having a goal, a target. What are you aiming at? Let's say it's 10 sales a month. Maybe it's 100, maybe it's 1,000. It doesn't matter. It starts with knowing what you're shooting at. And then you write down 3 to 5 things that have to happen before someone becomes a customer. Yeah. And I know sometimes there's 20 or 50 things that have to happen, but what are the 3 to 5 that absolutely every time have to happen? And then put last month's number underneath each one of those stages. Don't worry about industry benchmarks or what's in your CRM or all the different marketing channels. Just focus on those things and then do it again next month and then do it again this month. And then you've got a quarter's worth of data and you can start to see trends. What numbers are changing? Where are people dropping out? What's working? What's not working? What's missing? Again, you don't need more data at this stage. You just need a few numbers that help you make better decisions and operate in less stress and less chaos.
That's right.
So whether your sales are up or down, don't settle just for knowing what happened. Figure out why. That's how you stop running your business on I think or I feel and start running it on I know. If conversations like this help you think more clearly about your business, like this video, subscribe to this channel. Check us out at howtobusinesscoaching.com. Every week, we're taking one question that small business owners wrestle with and break it down so you can figure out what's keeping your business stuck and what to do next. See you next time.